It's Halloween. After trick or treat, the children are excited as they sort their treat sweets into groups. They group the sweets according to certain similarities. The peanut-filled chocolate goes into one pile, the pure sugary candies into another group, the chewy sweets into one more group, and so on, until every sweet has been grouped. Even at home, items of kitchenware are grouped and placed in their respective drawers. Similarly, on our planet Earth, millions of organisms have evolved and developed in particular patterns. To study them, scientists have classified organisms into various groups with the help of certain basic characteristics. How was grouping the vast variety of living creatures possible? How helpful was it? Why do we need to classify biological life? Let us recall how organisms in a food web are placed in a particular position on the trophic level. Classifying helps to identify the similarities and relationships between organisms. It narrows down the categories and makes the study of organisms easy. Similarly, to understand biological life on Earth, scientists have put the organisms into groups with members having basic similarities. The broadest divisions are called kingdoms. Around 2000 years ago, Greek thinker Aristotle was the first to classify organisms on scientific basis into two kingdoms, plants and animals. Plants were divided into three subgroups: herbs, shrubs, and trees, while animals were divided into two groups based on the presence or absence of red blood cells. He also classified animals according to their habitat: aquatic, terrestrial, or aerial. In the 18th century, Swedish scientist Carl Linnaeus also classified organisms into two kingdoms, Plantae and Animalia. These names are the Latin words for plants and animals. Plantae were classified as flowering and non-flowering plants, while Animalia were classified as unicellular and multicellular animals. Modern scientists have found this division inadequate, since many organisms, such as fungi and photosynthetic bacteria, could not be included in either of the two kingdoms. The criteria for classification needed changes. In 1969, R. H. Whitaker, a distinguished American plant ecologist, proposed a five-kingdom classification. These five kingdoms are Kingdom Monera, Kingdom Protista, Kingdom Fungi, Kingdom Plantae, Kingdom Animalia. The system of five kingdoms became very popular and formed the basis for a new multi-kingdom system. Whitaker classified the five kingdoms on the basis of their characteristics, such as cell type, cell structure, thallus organization, mode of nutrition, reproduction, and phylogenetic relationships. Phylogenetic relationships are the genetic and evolutionary relationships among various organisms living on our planet. Characteristics of Kingdom Monera. Monera includes bacteria and prokaryotes, which include blue-green algae or cyanobacteria. They have a simple structure, most of them being microscopic. Each individual is just one prokaryotic cell. This means that it lacks a well-defined nucleus and cell organelles. Most of them have a cell wall. Life began from prokaryotes. Just like plants, some members of the division Monera can produce their own food by photosynthesis, but many cannot. Reproduction can be asexual or sexual. Characteristics of kingdom Protista. Single-celled organisms such as the protozoa, diatoms and algae that live in water are classified in the kingdom Protista. Protists, unlike the Monera, are eukaryotes. A eukaryotic cell has a membrane-bound nucleus and other organelles inside the cell, separate from the rest of the cell contents. Eukaryotic cells can be plant-like or animal-like. That is, some produce their own food by photosynthesis. Others consume other living things. Reproduction can be asexual or sexual. The other three kingdoms include the many-celled organisms. Characteristics of kingdom Fungi. Fungi are eukaryotes that include both single-celled yeasts and multicellular mushrooms. Their cell wall is made up of chitin or fungal cellulose and other substances. Fungi do not make their own food. Most fungi get nutrients from decaying organic material. They do not photosynthesize. Reproduction can be vegetative, asexual, or sexual. Characteristics of kingdom Plantae. Plantae include the grasses, trees, mosses, ferns, and all flowering and leafy plants. Plants are multicellular, composed of eukaryotic cells. Almost all life on Earth depends on them for food, directly or indirectly. Their cell wall is made up of cellulose. Plantae make their own food in the presence of chlorophyll. Reproduction can be sexual or asexual. Characteristics of kingdom Animalia. Animalia include the roundworms, mollusks, insects, birds, mammals, and reptiles. Most of them possess special sense organs. They are multicellular eukaryotic organisms. The cell wall is absent. They are dependent on other organisms for their food. Reproduction is mostly sexual. Arranging organisms in a systematic manner is useful in many respects. The classification of kingdoms separates prokaryotes from eukaryotes. Prokaryotes differ from all other organisms in their general organization. This system also classifies unicellular and multicellular organisms in separate kingdoms. It separates fungi, the non-photosynthetic organisms, from the photosynthetic plants. This system of kingdom classification gives a clear understanding of cellular organization and the modes of nutrition. It also takes into consideration the phylogenetic relationships.